And that is where we're at now with Donald Trump and China. The tariffs conversation is finally reaching a manageable landing point, and the markets are screaming for it. Okay, let's take a look.
Forever, but over the last 10 years, they've been very difficult for other countries. Nobody was able to do what we did, but they stopped, and we take their word for it. Their surrogates and them directly said, we don't want to do this anymore. So we were satisfied. In addition, yesterday we achieved a total reset with China after productive talks in Geneva. Both sides now agreed to reduce the tariffs imposed after April 2nd to 10% for 90 days as negotiators continue in the largest structural issues. And I want to tell you that a couple of things. First of all, that doesn't include the tariffs that are already.
For the record, the reason why he's doing this is because, one, Trump loves up and then trying to restore what he up and then try to secure a victory that way. That's the art of the deal. That's a classic Trump. Okay? Like, you make a play, you destabilize, and then you fold. But in the process of folding, people go, okay, well, at least you didn't fuck up everything. Like, thank God he brought this back. And that's the real art of the deal. Okay? That is the real art of the deal. That's how he is. That's basically how he's conducted himself over and over again, right? Luckily, he's saving the Labubu market for Cutie Cinderella, so shouts out to that. So there's that. Art of the deal, art of the steal. Now, with China, the efforts here are numerous. He wants to decouple our other trading partners from China. He does not want China to be a manufacturing hub. But the real stress point here wasn't necessarily the counter tariffs that China actually implemented to the United States of America. The real pressure point was China's effective trade embargo on key minerals that are necessary for American defense. That made things very unstable. That actually became a matter of national security. Okay? When China said, well, we have refinement capabilities, we have a monopoly on refinement for rare earth minerals that are necessary for a million different components that you need to build in the United States of America for your defense industry. All of a sudden, this became a real issue, okay? This became a matter of national security. So for Trump, he had to fix that problem, a problem that he created for no reason, that nobody asked for. So here we are.
That are our tariffs, and it doesn't include tariffs on cars, steel, aluminum, things such as that, or tariffs that may be imposed on pharmaceuticals, because we want to bring the pharmaceutical businesses back to the United States, and they're already starting to come back now based on tariffs because they don't want to pay 25, 50, or 100% tariffs, so they're moving them back to the United States. I spoke to Tim Cook this morning, and he's going to, I think, even up his numbers, $500 billion. He's going to be building a lot of plants in the United States for Apple, and we look forward to that. I really do look forward to that. But the talks in Geneva were very friendly. The relationship is very good. We're not looking to hurt China. China was being hurt very badly. They were closing up factories. They were having a lot of unrest, and they were very happy to be able to do something with us. And the relationship is very, very good. I'll speak to President Xi maybe at the end of the week. We have some other things we're doing. But one of the biggest things that we're doing, and I don't know if people realize this, but we made a great deal with China, a great trade deal. But it was a much bigger deal originally, and then they canceled it right in the last day. Some of you faces I remember were there when that happened. I remember you. And we had a deal where they opened up their country to trade with the United States. And they took that away at the last moment. And then I canceled the whole thing. And then 6 months later, we ended up doing a smaller deal. But it was a big deal. It was $50 billion worth of product that they were going to.
Yeah, here's Charles Gasparino from Fox Business, by the way, the man who has been incredibly critical of Trump's tariff regime throughout this entire process, says, breaking, in talking to sources who run small business, the pause with China came just as their companies were on the precipice of disaster since they source so much of their material from China, and the containers coming from China were coming back empty. If you want to know why we were as desperate for a deal as the Chinese, it's because small business, a key MAGA constituency, was about to get crushed. This is the other side of the story as well. This guy is still talking about Kamala. The entire chat is about hypotheticals such as massive labor movement when the guy in charge right now hates union labor. Yeah, hypotheticals about what could have made her won. But even hypotheticals are not absolute enough for you, so it isn't good. Look, chatter, take it up with the Kamala campaign, okay? Can you go on LOLCal Live tonight? What the f*** is that? Is that the Keemstar show? Don't you feel embarrassed to come in here and say that you're like an active participant? You're an active consumer of Keemstar's content? I'm going to be honest with you, chatter. You should be. Like, you should be incredibly embarrassed. The f***. God damn. So many losers online. And what's worse is they feel emboldened. Where is the shame? Yeah, this is my favorite. I'm voting for Donald Trump for the economy and to own the libs. Well, there went my shoe business. I don't understand why the tariffs have to eliminate the de minimis exemption. Why does government punish small businesses in the country knowing full well that Nike and all the big brands will be fine paying the taxes, but Steffi and I get wiped out? All the crazies really are coming out lately, and common sense seems lost a lot of them time. Yeah, common sense not so common. So tariffs are still not gone, by the way. So these guys will still suffer, just not as much. It is no longer like a de facto trade embargo, but there's still issues.
The rest of the
Okay. Every major trader and investor I spoke to today said markets are ripping, not because Trump crafted some great art of the deal with China on trade. Rather, we are back to square one with the country and kicking the tariff war can down the road that averts stagflation in the short term and maybe longer if we get a deal in 90 days. Yes, markets love trade capitulation. Yeah, it's the Trump / subsequent cleanup. Anyway, let's continue.
Purchase from our farmers, etc. And we agreed to that. People thought it was 15 because they were doing 15. We made it 50 because I misunderstood the 15. I said, you got to get 50. Because when I asked, if you remember the story, when I asked, what are we doing with them? My Secretary of Agriculture at the time, Sonny Perdue, said, sir, it's about 15 billion and we're asking for 15. And I thought he said 50. So I said, so they came back with the deal at 15. And I said, no way, I want 50 because you said 50. They said, sir, we didn't say that anyway. Bottom line, I said, go back and ask for 50. And they gave us 50. And they were honoring the deal. And we would call them up a lot for the corn and for the wheat and for everything. They were honoring the deal. And then when Biden got in, they no longer honored the deal. There was nobody to call. I would call on an average of once every 2 weeks to say, come on, you have to speed it up a little bit. And our farmers were doing great. I said to them, buy more land and bigger tractors, if you remember. That's what happened. But the deal was a very good deal. But the best part of the deal was that we opened up China. China agreed to open itself up to American business to go in. And it would have been a great thing, I think, for China. They would be able to see things that they haven't seen. They would be able to buy products that they had never been able to buy. Would have been great for American business. I think it would have brought unity between China, better unity between China and the United States. And the bottom line is that they canceled it the last day. We were all set to sign it. And I went a little bit angry. I got a little angry. I said, they canceled the deal. The deal was done. It was all ready to be signed. And people went over, they came back to me, sir, they don't want to sign the opening up China. Well, the biggest thing that we're discussing is the opening up China, and they've agreed to do that. But it's going to take a while to paper it. You know, that's not the easiest thing to paper. But that's the single, I think, to me, some people would disagree. Some people would say we're getting a lot of money with tariffs or whatever. But, you know, especially when you add what we already have.
What the are you saying, man? All right, I'm going to skip this. Let's see.
So the latest on
let's get to the actual analysis because I can't listen to him ramble on. All right. So some of the major goals here were some of the stated goals here are obviously very different than what the actual goals were. The actual goals were to try to apply pressure to China's other trade partners that we also trade with in an effort to decouple them from China. And he did not reach any success on that, as far as I understand, considering that everyone was like, well, okay, we'll buy your salmonella chicken, but like, we're not going to stop trading with a major manufacturing hub. Okay. As far as capitulating and dialing back the tariffs regime, I mean, he didn't really get anything in return. So this was an incredibly, this was just an incredibly stupid thing that he did. That was an exercise in futility. And as I told you, China would come to the table to after a period of instability that every outlet is going to present as China caving to the brave and mighty American art of the deal guy, Donald Trump, as the New York Times did this morning, predictably. China is now coming back to the table to reassert stability in terms of global trade.
On the president's trade war, and news breaking overnight that China and the U.S. have reached a short-term agreement. Our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, is tracking the latest on this trade deal. Good morning, Rachel.
Michael, good morning to you. And this is a breakthrough in talks between the world's two largest economies, but it's also a dramatic retreat from President Trump's 145% tariffs that he imposed on Chinese imports. After all of the tough talk and hard lines, both sides agreeing to dramatically roll back their tariffs, at least for now. This morning, the Trump administration emerging from a marathon weekend of negotiations, announcing the U.S. has reached a trade deal with China to significantly lower most tariffs for 90 days.
We have reached an agreement on a 90-day pause and substantially moved down the tariff levels.
The U.S. agreed to roll back its steep 145% tariff on Chinese imports to 30%.
There is something really interesting about how the New York Times very quickly wrote a report on how China was on the verge of failure and on the verge of collapse, and that Donald Trump's actions actually caused them to capitulate and come to the table and backtrack on everything. And it's like, I don't know how you can see it as that. Also, you are the New York Times. Why are you saying that? Okay, here's Bloomberg Business with a very different and clear-cut approach, and saying Xi Jinping's decision to stand his ground against Donald Trump could hardly have gone any better for the Chinese leader. He did. This is why, look, there are brilliant analysts who are incredibly well-read, but one thing actually ruins their perspective, and that is their inherent Western bias, their refusal to understand how the Chinese government operates, and their refusal to ever entertain China as a reasonable state actor instead of like this belligerent state that is constantly on the verge of collapse. I'm telling you right now, this is the reason why a lot of Western analysts who are incredibly well-read routinely fail to call this in the way that someone, myself, not as well read, total dumbass, himbo, can actually call ahead of time what is going to take place. Okay? I'm not like brilliant or anything. I don't have the gift of foresight. I simply am looking at the situation and not assuming that China is on the verge of collapse as this like despotic there's this despotic dictatorship that's going to crumble any day now. Okay? That's it. I'm not a oracle. So why is the New York Times still doing this shit? Why is the New York Times still making it seem like this is a major W for Donald Trump? Because that's what they did. The Daily basically did that today. At odds with the reality, at odds with everything that we have seen thus far, and also at odds with like other analysts that aren't playing this line. Yeah, this is the article title. This was the New York Times assessment. A vulnerable China comes to the table.
So, have you?
The negotiations between China and the U.S. have implications for a global economy rocked by President Trump's tariffs. What a stupid way to cover this. What a stupid and wrong way to just use the paper of record to do normalization for a abnormal president. It blows my mind, okay? New York Times journalist also said Trump receiving a plane isn't corruption. This is not specifically quid pro quo. It is corruption, and I'm here for it, by the way. Who blinked first? How the U.S. and China broke their trade deadlock? Wait, what did the Financial Times say? I want to see, because I do trust the Financial Times. Probably one of the best newspapers. I'd be shocked if they actually took an approach that said, like, do we have an archived paywall post for this? Hold on. Paywall remover. Let's see. Financial Times is probably the best newspaper. I'll be honest with you. Like, out of all of the major newspapers, they are the one that routinely has done fantastic coverage both on Gaza. What is happening here? Okay. All right. The first meeting to break the U.S.-China trade deadlock was held almost 3 weeks ago in the basement of the IMF headquarters, arranged under cover of secrecy. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who was attending the IMF spring meetings in Washington, met China's Finance Minister Liu Fuan to discuss the near-complete breakdown in trade between the world's two biggest economies, according to people familiar with the matter. The previously unreported encounter was the first high-level meeting between U.S. and Chinese officials since Donald Trump's inauguration and the launch of his tariff war. The talks culminated this weekend in Geneva with Bessent and He Lifeng, China's vice premier, agreeing a ceasefire that would slash respective tariffs by 115 percentage points for 90 days. Despite both sides warning that they are willing to dig in for the long haul, the truce proved easier and faster to agree than expected. One overriding question has significant implications for the negotiations to come. Did Beijing or Washington flinch first? Trump on Monday claimed victory, saying he had engineered a total reset with China. Bro, you started it. Dude, this is the same exact thing that Trump dick riders did initially, where Trump dick riders were like, oh, tariffs are going to be good, actually. And then when he reversed all the universal tariffs that he had slapped on and like lowered them to 10%, he was like, art of the deal, sir. It's like, okay, why did you want the tariffs initially if you're going to say art of the deal when he dials back? Like, what the Meanwhile, Hu Zhijing, the former editor of the National Communist Party tabloid, The Global Times, said on social media that the deal was a great victory for China. The U.S. is chickened out, said one popular Chinese social media post of the deal. Economists agreed that the U.S. might have overplayed its hand by raising the tariffs too quickly and too high. The U.S. blinked first, said Alicia Garcia Herrero, chief Asia-Pacific economist at French investment bank Natixis. It thought it could raise tariffs almost infinitely without being hurt, but that hasn't been proven right. The U.S. and China had each argued that the other was more vulnerable to the tariffs, but the speed with which they unwound the levies in Geneva suggested the trade war was inflicting severe pain on both sides, she added. A hard decoupling of the world's two largest economies was threatening job losses for Chinese workers and higher inflation and empty shelves for American consumers. Craig Singleton of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a think tank... Oh, God. The worst, by the way. FDD is awful. A think tank in Washington said it was striking how quickly the deal had emerged, suggesting that both sides are more economically boxed in than they let on. While Beijing stood toe-to-toe with Washington in fighting Trump's tariffs, Chinese negotiators still have more work to do to level the playing field. The U.S. still retains much higher tariffs on China than on any other country. Capital Economics calculated that the total U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods would remain about 40%. After the ceasefire with Chinese tariffs on the U.S. would be about 25%. Experts also warned it would be a hard road to secure any agreement that would be more lasting. For the record, and I said this already, China, remember, I told you, China, after a period of instability, showing the rest of the fucking global leaders who is actually the unstable, belligerent, hegemonic power here, okay, will then come to the table and offer concessions to make Trump feel good. Give Trump a make nice, okay? In order to restore stability to global trade, which of course Trump is refusing to do regardless. He seemingly is still invested in like this decoupling. The U.S.-China trade negotiations are going to be like a roller coaster, says Scott Kennedy, a China expert at CSIS, a think tank. Markets can breathe a temporary sigh of relief, but we're nowhere near out of the woods. Ahead of the talks, Bessent had warned that the high level of tariffs was not sustainable and amounted to an effective embargo on U.S.-China trade. The ceasefire at least narrowed the gap sufficiently for China's extremely price-competitive manufacturers to remain in business with the U.S. Alfredo Montefar-Hilu, head of the China Center of the Conference Board think tank in New York, said it would have been impossible for Chinese producers to offset 145% tariffs imposed by the U.S., but at 30%, I think most Chinese imports in the U.S. would regain their competitiveness. Before the talks in Geneva, Besson had said the two sides were unlikely to reach a broad economic and trade deal, saying they needed to de-escalate before we can move forward. But on Monday, he struck an optimistic note, hinting that Washington might be looking for the type of purchase agreements that characterized the initial phase of the U.S.-China trade war during Trump's first term. These involved Beijing agreeing to buy quantities of commodities such as soybeans and the U.S. manufactured goods, but they were disrupted by the pandemic. There will also be a possibility of purchase agreements to pull what is our largest bilateral trade deficit into balance, Besson said. Besson and Greer also sounded positive. Like, what are they going to do? Buy all the soybeans readily available? Like, oh, yeah. Your pro-China propaganda is sickening. Oh, yeah. Keep getting sick, chatter. Are you saying the Financial Times is doing pro-China propaganda and it's making you sick? Should I lie to you and act like this situation was actually totally manageable and Trump was a brilliant trade deal maker? I don't understand. Like, what do people want me to do? Lie to them? Is that what you think is better to do here? To tell you a lie? To act like Donald Trump breaking global trade because he was bored was actually really good? Listen up, President Xi. I'm sorry. Based. That's the real. Yeah, if you want someone to tell you, serve you a lie about how awesome and brilliant Trump is, Asmongold's down the road, you know? Next door. He's next door serving that good slop that people want to hear. Seemingly, a lot of people would rather be deluded into believing in a completely alternative reality than to make a assessment on cold, hard truths. The upside surprise for me this weekend was the level of Chinese engagement on the fentanyl crisis. He said the Chinese delegation included an official who had very robust and highly detailed discussions with someone from the U.S. National Security Team. For Beijing, a fentanyl deal could erase 20 percentage points of remaining tariffs imposed by Trump, placing China roughly on a level playing field with other countries exporting to the U.S. China would still face the fentanyl stuff is the funniest. I know you seeing these. Dude, it's my most annoying. Okay, here, take a week off. I'm sorry. One of the things that annoys me the most is like when chatters go, I know you saw my post. I know you saw my post. Respond to me. There's 40,000 people in here, man. Jesus Christ. Asman briefly floated suing me. Wait, what? For what? He says you defame him? About what? I defame him for what? Saying that he doesn't take a shower? No judge is going to look at that situation and go, yeah, this is actually defamation. Judges are going to look at that and be like, dude, are you serious? Are you serious? Come on, dog. I don't think you take a shower either. What do you mean? Are you going to sue me next? I'm the judge here. Yeah, judge is going to take one look at that and be like, yeah, based. It's funny to see Asmongold also turn into Ethan Klein, like trying to be litigious and Has your detention made you more empathetic towards the imprisoned? What are you talking about, dude? My conditions were not the same as someone who's in prison. Also, I'm already maximum empathetic to people who are in prison. So anyway, where was I? Let's continue. Even with this the fentanyl stuff. The fentanyl stuff is extra funny. The fentanyl stuff is extra funny because like virtually everyone knows the fentanyl stuff is just like, it's not the fentanyl is coming into the United States of America, but it is like a reason to try and start a trade war. You know what I mean? So everyone is basically trying to be like, listen, big dog, we got you. We'll do this thing that you want us to do. We'll really deal with the fence stuff. Even with this respite, economists caution that the bilateral relationship will remain troubled with Trump's unpredictable policymaking expected to drive China to continue to diversify its exports market and try to stimulate more domestic demand. Chinese exporters were also probably use the 90-day window for negotiation to front-load more exports in the U.S., which could lead to another surge in China's trade surplus with the country. A durable resolution remains challenging, given the complex bilateral relationship, said Robin Xing, economist at Morgan Stanley, in a note. Anyway, China is Trump is doing expert level tactics. Congratulations, sir. Thank you so much for scaling back the onslaught of global trade for no discernible reason.
China agreeing to lower its tax on American goods from 125% to 10%. For weeks, the president has been defiant about keeping his tariffs in place, even as markets tumbled and retailers warned their shelves could go empty.
I know what the hell I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, and you know what I'm doing, too.
China took a hard line, too, insisting no matter how long the trade war lasts, will never yield. But just as both sides touched down in Geneva, Switzerland for those high-stakes talks, the president with a change in tone, suggesting he would be willing to drop his tariffs even lower to 80%. The deal the U.S. reached is much lower than that.
We concluded that we have shared interest. The consensus from both delegations this weekend is neither side wants a decoupling.
On Wall Street, stock futures surging as the U.S. and China return back to the negotiating table in hopes of reaching a long-term deal. So investors are rejoicing this morning, but the full economic impact of this on and off again trade war still remains very unclear at this point. That question will be answered likely in 90 days as these two sides continue their negotiations, Michael.
Yeah, still a lot of that is still unclear, Rachel. But Rachel, the president posting on social media that he will sign an executive order aimed at lowering prescription drug costs.
Yes, Michael, the president says he'll be signing that executive order in just a few hours before he heads off on this foreign trip. It is aimed at lowering the price of prescription drugs. The goal here to force pharmaceutical companies to charge the U.S.
This was, first of all, it's so funny for Donald Trump to try to do this through tariffs, which is, of course, inflationary. But also, dog, the reason why pharmaceutical drug costs are so expensive in America is because we don't have mass purchasing. And up until recently, it was already illegal. Like, it was illegal for even the VA, which is one of the only nationalized healthcare structures that exists. It was illegal for the VA until Obama to even lower pharmaceutical price at the point of purchase through mass purchases. We are the only country on the planet that does not engage in this process, by the way, in the developed world and even in the underdeveloped world. So if you want to actually lower pharmaceutical costs, which I'm on board with, oh my God, 100%, you have to force the pharmaceutical companies to lower the costs at the point of purchase. You have to literally tell them, like, you can't do this. You cannot increase prices. China does it. Everybody does it. It's not unique to China at all. He has to implement. Look, medicine is an inelastic. Medicine has inelastic demand. Okay, which means inelastic demand means that the price can be erroneously increased, and people still need it regardless. Because if they don't get it, they die. So people will pay whatever price you set for it, or they die. So the only thing you could do in this process is either restructure the way that the American government purchases all medicine and create some semblance of socialized medicine structure so that there is bargaining agreements at the point of purchase when you're mass purchasing for the country, as is the case with every country on the planet, by the way. Virtually every country on the planet does this. Like, this is not a crazy socialistic, idealistic, utopian, communist argument, okay? Every country does this, except for the United States of America. Or, if you can't do that because you don't want to do socialized medicine, you have to implement price controls. That's it. Hold on. I'm getting blown up by journalists that are all writing about the ICE detention situation. But that vid where the Chinese government walks in and throws their dick on the table and just tells them no is so good. Yeah, bulk purchasing of medicine is literally how 99% of countries get their medicine into the consumer market. It's crazy that the U.S. doesn't do that. And the only area where they actually do engage in bulk purchasing is Veterans Affairs, because that is the only thing that is like resembling a nationalized structure. And there are a lot of complications for the VA, obviously, because like their entire insured pool is deeply sick because they're veterans, right? You get during basic training. So there is no way to leverage the healthy pool that is paying into this process with the unhealthy pool, because the entire pool that needs care is unhealthy, and it's an ever-growing pool of unhealthy people. So it's not even a perfect representation of like how nationalized medicine would work. Having said that, it was illegal until recently for even the VA to engage in bargaining at the point of bulk purchase. Please understand how psychotic this country is. For Europeans that are tuning in, think about how nutty that is, okay? It is so crazy. Whereas every other country on the planet literally engages in bulk purchase at the point of any pharmaceutical entering the market. This is the reason why American drugs are 10x the cost of drugs elsewhere.
The lowest price that they charge other companies. Now, if implemented, this would likely have the largest impact on drugs covered by Medicare and that are administered in a doctor's office. But the White House not releasing any other details this morning, and implementing this could be very complicated, Michael.
All right, Rachel Scott, thank you so much.
We start with a Fox News alert. The United States and China have reached an agreement.
Anyway, one of the funniest Trump still got it moments was when he was talking about price caps potentially. And, you know, I hate to give it to the guy whose admin, falsely detained me at the goddamn airport. But, you know, I call balls and strikes, as I said in my detention interrogation, whatever you want to call it. He still got it. Okay. He still got that fastball, baby. Look, this is a fantastic example of a man who still got it. This 56-second moment. Let's take a look.
I mean, I'll tell you a story. A friend of mine who's a businessman, very, very, very top guy. Most of you would have heard of him. A highly neurotic, brilliant businessman, seriously overweight.
Highly neurotic, seriously overweight.
He takes the fat shot.
He takes the fat shot.
And he called me up and he said, President, he calls me, he used to call me Donald, now he calls me President, so that's nice respect. But he's a rough guy, smart guy, very successful, very rich. I wouldn't even know how we would know this, but because he's got comments. President, could I ask you a question? What? I'm in London, and I just paid for this damn fat drug I take. I said, it's not working. He said,
it's not working.
I just paid $88. And in New York, I pay $1,300. What the hell is going on?
Dude, amazing. No notes. 10-10. Also, the other side of this story that I find insane is that, like, these global multinational conglomerate owning billionaires are shocked at the price disparity in the European markets for what I already explained to you, which is socialized medicine, an important aspect of socialized medicine. It's like, really? That's what it took for you to comprehend that, like, is incredibly up in America? Like, how? Like, what, are you that stupid? This is the type of story that reminds me that some of these guys are not like as, I don't want to say they're not as evil, because their output is still pretty evil, but they're more stupid than they are deliberately evil, okay? Because you operate under the assumption that, like, everyone is aware of these things that I'm aware of, that you're aware of, right? And then you encounter a story like this, and you're like, what the like, how is this news to you, man? How is this news to you? God damn, how'd you become a billionaire? How is this possible? Like, what a perfect demonstration that meritocracy is just a lie, okay? It's just an abject lie that you can have a guy who is a multi-billionaire, a titan of commerce and industry, be this oblivious to just basic amenities offered by social democracies. Like, that's insane. Oh my God. It is crazy. It is crazy. I always forget that people in positions of power are just as stupid as people who are, YouTube commentary slop tubers. Okay, like I sometimes fail for the position of authority fallacy, because deep down inside, I also, I guess, have some kind of commitment to institutions and their infallibility. So I assume that these guys are sharks and they're smart, and actually they're presenting themselves as like oblivious, but in fact they are completely aware of the unjustifiable structures that they have played a role in cementing. And then you hear a story like this and you're like, oh no, they're just dumb. Like, they're actually dumb. They're actually oblivious. And it blows my goddamn mind. Like, how did you live for as long as you did and become a titan of industry, a commerce giant, and just completely remove yourself from normal day-to-day existence that cause you to be this oblivious to the basic things that social democracies afford? Wow. Incredible. Would I be canceled if I named the person he's talking about? Wait, what? I want to know. I wonder, X-based? I mean, why would they know? Elon for sure? I doubt that it's Elon. Trump is likely referring to Elon Musk. No, I don't think it's Elon. It's not Elon. It's funny to think it probably is, but I don't think it's Elon Musk. There are a lot of people that are on Ozempic in the admin, so it could be any number of people. It could be any number of like Trump adjacent billionaires too. There's a ton of people that are taking Ozempic now. What do you think like happened to Mike Pompeo? You know what I mean? Or even like a Bill Barr. Like they all have lost hundreds of pounds. Collectively, they've lost like 1,000 pounds. How do you think that happened over the course of 1 year?